Alright guys, I want to talk a little bit about gear junkies. As anybody that's ever watched any of my videos knows, I'm probably as bad at gear junkie as anybody else. But what I want to try and get across, the point I'm trying to make here today is, if you've ever looked at the way my kits are set up, each kit blends into the next one. So here we have my true, my full pack with everything from water to, we've got machetes on it, the whole 9 yards. But inside this pack, well, before I get into that, let me tell you why I got this idea and why I'm where I'm at for doing this video. I sat and was talking to some guys at an Army surplus store, and a guy was kind of going over, some of the stuff he had, and he had some great ideas in there, and I'm not knocking this guy in any way, shape, or form. But inside his pack, he had a store-bought bow drill set. He had bought it from some, Bushcraft website or whatever he found it. I don't know where he found it. He told me, I don't remember. But to me, a bow drill is not something you buy and carry. That's something you build in the woods as needed. Gear's great. It's great to make life easier in a survival situation. And the more gear you have and the more gear you can carry, that's great. Anything that you can buy that lends to making life easier, because if you really think about it in a survival situation, you're going to have a limited, especially in the first couple days, you're going to have a limited amount of time to produce water, shelter, fire, and food. So, like with my snare kit that I curtailed in another video on how to make snares, or my autonomous fishing system, which I'm going to do a video on how I make it work. Those are, which the autonomous fishing system is basically a snare only into the water to use for catching fish. But those are ways I can go spend a little bit of time, set up something that should theoretically get me something to eat while I go and do other stuff I need to do. Now I carry, one of the handy dandy little quick filtration water kits. But again, that is something you need to be able to do without any store-bought equipment, because one thing we know about gear, it's going to either break, run its lifespan, be lost or stolen. And you can't always protect your gear. You can't be 3 places at once, especially if by yourself. You never know, somebody might come by. If you're in a situation where you're trying to hide from the world, like a lot of guys have got in their mindset, you can't have it, you can't hide it all. And you can't carry it all the time, every time, and move effectively and do what you need to do. So you really have to get back to the basics. You need to know, how are you going to go out and build a bow drill to start a fire? Where can you come up with cordage, and can you build a hook from what you can find in the wild? Can you build a snare from what you can find in your surroundings? And the answer is you can do all that if you take the time to practice it. Now, YouTube videos are great, and everybody that's watching this video has probably found a video somewhere on how to make and run a bow drill to build a fire or a hand drill. And that's great that you've watched a video, that now you have the ideas and the concept of how it works. But you need to get out there and do it, because like on a bow drill set, it's very important that your drill is harder than your plate wood or your base. There's just some key elements in doing it that, yeah, you can get the idea from watching YouTube or anything else on the internet, but until you go out and do it, you're not going to really truly understand the principles behind it and how hard it is, or some of the tricks to making it work. But like I said, this guy had bought a bow drill set, a store-bought, or not so much store-bought, but a produced bow drill, and he's got it carrying it in his pack. Which, if that's his only source of starting fire, okay, that's fine. But I carry things like my cotton ball trick, which I've showed. I carry char cloth, which I've showed. I carry lighters. Good old-fashioned Bic. Put a flame, flip it and get a flame to it lighter. So if I'm going to take up space in my pack, it's not going to be with something that I can make later. Now, I'm not saying you can't, like a snare. Yeah, sure. Can you make a snare in the wild? Absolutely. For all the more amount of space I use in my snare kit, to have pre-made snares to save me time in the woods, so I can run out, set up my snares. Okay, now I'm moving on to gathering firewood, or working on a shelter. Whatever reason am I going to use. But my packs collapse into each other. So, here I have my big, massive, pack that I've got everything up to, but not including the kitchen sink in here. But inside this, when it's set up and ready to go, and this is just a military Molly 2 pack setup. Inside that, I have, and I've detailed this kit before, I have my 72-hour kit. So if I need to dump this big pack, for whatever reason, I need to move lighter, I lose it, it's stolen, whatever, or if I'm just going to walk away and spend a little bit of time further away, then I have my 72-hour pack in here. In here I have more of the basics, more of the gotta have it survival type stuff. For instance, if you get inside here, the first thing you'll find is my foot ring of 550 cord, some knives, saws, the basics of what I'm going to need. Now if I'm in the woods, this is already going to be around my neck knife, which gives me fire and cutting tool. This is kind of the last thing I'm going to drop right before I die. And what you're going to have in those situations is a whole bunch of gear donors, and I've said that before, but you've got people going out and they're buying all this high dollar gear, and they're as gear junky as anybody. I carry a bow saw, or not a bow saw, folding saw. Is this a great tool? Absolutely. This is one of the best pieces of kit you can get for 20 or 30 bucks. Save you a lot of work and a lot of calories in the woods, and when you're in a survival situation, the less calories you can expend, the longer your lifespan is going to be. And I've got everything in here. I've got a little bit of food. I've got blah blah blah. But again, if I would need to dump this for whatever reason, I can't carry it, I have my little Riette kit that this will go on my belt, and I can't see a reason in the world I would ever have to dump this. But again, fire, the true basics. I have an emergency blanket. I have a couple versions of fire in there. And I've done a video on this, so I'm not going to get into what it is, what's all in it. But again, kit inside a kit inside a kit. So as situation demands, if I need to dump stuff, I can keep dumping down and lightening myself up for whatever situation's around me. And eventually maybe only end up with what I can actually carry in my arms. Now I can't see an honest reason I would ever have to drop this pack or even my bigger pack, honestly. But when you get down to it, you don't know what's going to happen. If you knew, you'd prepare for it and take exactly what you need. Well, I'm going to get stuck beside a place with a big farm, big pond that's full of fish, and that's where I'm going to be, so I'd take my fishing kit, and that's about all I'd take. But again, I don't know. You need to know how to do things in the woods the basic way. No matter what it is. You need to know how to make a shelter from nothing but what you can find in the woods. It's called a debris huts. It is the version I prefer. But I can make it from sticks, twigs, brush, leaves, and everything that the woods provides to me. Now, a debris hut is not a real good survival situation shelter somewhere like the middle of the Arizona desert. So you need to know what options you're going to have there too. I don't live in the Arizona desert. I don't intend to spend any real time in the Arizona desert or any other desert. If I go to the desert, I will spend time learning the things I need to know to survive in that area. But I don't live in that area. So you really need to curtail this to where you live, because the honest truth of it all is, there's these guys that are just great at any survival situation in the world, and most of it will always translate across. But, you know, finding water for me is not going to be near as hard of a concern as it would be in the desert. However, for me, purifying water is going to be a much larger issue. I know there's plenty of water around central Oklahoma that I can find in ponds and streams and creek beds, and there's wells all over this place. But, you know, making that water potable or drinkable is more of a concern to me. You know, typically in the wintertime around here, you know, having a fire is going to be a huge issue, which fire is always a huge issue for everybody. But again, there's much better space. There's a much better way to utilize the space in your pack than buying a bow drill set, when that is something you can truly build from a couple of sticks, some wood you find, with a pocket knife, and take your shoelace, which pretty much everybody's going to have a shoelace. Even if you don't have a shoelace, you can make the cordage to make a bow drill out of your shirt, off your back. I mean, there's so many ways to make that bow drill and make it work effectively. To me, to carry the most primitive forms of fire making or whatever in a pack isn't... I applaud his effort, I really do. But everybody needs to stop, move back, and think about, okay, if I'm building kits and I'm building gear, I'm trying to make life easier. I'm trying to make my fire making take a minute or two instead of an hour or two. If you're going to make your snares, pre-making your snares, you're trying to turn your snare setup into an hour as opposed to 5 hours. Your shelter, you carry those, you know, you carry tarps, and I have a tarp in there that's just a pain in the ass to get back in there, so I'm not going to pull it out, but I have a 10 by 12 tarp packed in here behind my my water bladder. And again, the tarp is a great quick shelter for a decent climate range. Now, is that tarp going to protect me from the elements in the dead of winter, or 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds and it's 10 below zero? It's a start, but it's not the best option you have at that moment, at that time. So what you need to do, in my opinion, this is all my opinion, but you need to really step back, look at what you're putting in your kit, and think about what's going to happen when you don't have that. You know, I carry a lot of knives. In fact, that's some of the comments I get. Man, you got so many knives, you're just wasting time and kit space. To me, a knife is the absolute end-all, catch-all. I can do everything I need to do with a good knife. I can. So, to me, that's the last thing in the world I'm going to drop. You know, because once you don't have a knife, you don't have anything. You know, and I don't think there's anybody really that's going to spend any time out in the woods in the bushcraft community that's going to tell you any different. You know, your knife. That's why you see a lot of these guys wearing it around their neck. That knife is the one tool. Can you find the right rocks and make a decent knife that you can work with? Yeah, you can. It's going to suck. It's going to take you a bunch of time to build it, and it's not going to have near the edge or the cutting abilities that a store-bought high-end something like a Mora is going to have. Can it be done? Absolutely. Did they do it 500 years ago without any modern technology? Absolutely. And I'm not... You can do anything. You don't need anything to survive. If you want to, and if you have the knowledge, and if you take the time to learn those skills. But, you know, I just watched a video. I've always thought, you know, it would be cool to be able to take a tree and make a bow, a hunting bow out of it. And I've been watching some videos, and I'm going to go try it this week. Found a guy on there, and I honestly can't remember his name. I subscribe to him, so you guys can go up to my subscribe things and find it. I think that he tried out for the dual survival. He's got a video on there. His unnamed. He's trying, you know, his trying out for an unnamed survival show for Discovery, I believe. What it ended up being is dual survival with Dave Canterbury, which I followed for a long time on YouTube. And I can't think of the guy that goes barefoot's name off the top of my head, but you know, he obviously is very skilled individual. He makes about a 4 or 5 part series on making a longbow out of a tree, and very informative, very good video. Very seems like a real nice guy. But you know, that's something that I'm going to learn, because I am constantly trying to evolve my bushcraft skills. What I know today, I intend to know more tomorrow. You have to understand in all of these skills and all of these crafts, what works for you is great, and that's what you need to stick with, is what works for you. But don't be opposed to learning what somebody else, you know, information that somebody else offers. Nobody knows it all. Nobody has. There's no best way to do everything. There's good ways to do everything, but you know, you have to be willing to accept that the way you know, whether you learned it yourself or you were taught, might not be the best way anymore. The situation may have evolved. Same way with handgun shooting. You know, we used to think the Weaver stance was it, and now through competition and combat, we've learned that the Weaver stance pretty much sucks. I mean, it has its place in using cover and all that, but for open air gunfights or speed shooting, it's just no longer the best thing in the world. And some people have a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact, well, I was taught to shoot with the Weaver stance and they've been doing it for 150 years. Yeah, they have. That doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. It just means it's the way they've been doing it the longest. Everything evolves and everything changes. But you still need to be able to go back to the basics. You need to be able to figure out how to start a fire with nothing. You need to be able to build a shelter with nothing. You need to be able to gather or find food or hunt food with nothing. And to me, being able to make a bow in the woods with nothing more than a pocket knife, it goes into my, I need to learn how to do that. I need to learn how to do it proficiently. I don't need to be an expert at it, but I need to be able to do it and make it work. So that's the next thing that I'm personally going to work on. I'm going to build me some longbows. That way I know if I ever get in a long-term survival situation, that's an option I have. But you're going to be doing so much else while you're in the wood. You're not going to have excuse me, you're not going to have 4 or 5 days to dedicate to building a bow. That's something you're going to have to do in between all the other chores that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to keep your shelter maintained, and where it keeps the elements off you and the weather off you. You're going to have to keep your firewood gathered, more so in, you know, the winter environments than in the summer. You know, in the summer I would have a little bit more time to spend building a bow, because I'm not going to be spending near as much time gathering firewood. You're going to have to spend your time, you know, doing what you have to do to gather food, even if it's building deadfalls out of sticks. You know, once you have a knife, you know, that's what it all goes back to. You know, with one little knife. In this case, even if you take all the, you know, the fire starting kit off here, with this knife I can do whatever I need to do. With this knife I can build deadfalls. I can make the figure 4 to build a deadfall, and I mean, with a deadfall to me is like a snare. They're low percentage food gathering items. You need a bunch of them to guarantee that you're going to get something to eat. But again, that is behind needing water, because you can go quite a ways without food, but you can't go very long without water. So you need to be able to find your water, purify your water. I mean, everybody knows you can boil water, but there's also some filter systems that you can build in the wild to make your water a little bit cleaner and a little bit better, and filter out a bunch of the stuff that you don't want to be drinking. You know, that's ultimately, at the end of the day, the biggest concern you're going to have is, hey, I need to get my water and I need to get it purified. But you're going to be doing all this stuff, and you know, during the summer when you've got 12, 14 hours daylight, or however much daylight you have in your area of the world, when you've got, you know, the longest days of the year, yeah, that's great. You've got a bunch of light to do that kind of stuff. But in the wintertime, when you're limited to 6 or 8 hours of daylight, good daylight, you know, getting out there and finding food and getting some water, and, you know, getting enough water purified to drink for a day or two, and then, you know, gathering berries if that's what you're going to do, or keeping your shelter up, which, you know, keeping your shelter up in the wintertime under those short time frames of daylight is going to be more important yet. So my advice to y'all is, tear down your kit, break it up into segments. This is my cutting tools, this is my fire starting, this is my first aid, this is my this, and this. Break it down into components and look at the core. Okay, I've got a fire steel, and I've got I've got fire steel, and I've got some char cloth, and I got some blah blah blah, and I've got all this stuff to make fire. Okay, there's all my stuff to make fire. Now, how can I do that if all this is gone? Take your shelter. Here's my tarp, here's my cordage, here's my my 550 cord. Here's all that. That all lends to building a shelter. How can I do that if all that is gone? If it has been taken from me, I have lost it, whatever. Take your kit, break it down into groups, and then figure out what you need to do to replace that in the wild, and then go learn how to do that. Is what the whole point of this video is. Before modern technology, and before factories, and before cars, and before all that stuff, people were living in the woods, living full lives. Maybe, some will argue fuller than what we do today in the modern rat race. But they did all this stuff with what nature gave them, not with what they could buy. So like I said, I'm as bad a gear donor, I'm as bad of a gear junkie as anybody else. But even if my gear is taken away from me, I can still get it done. So, like I said before, there is a bunch of people that are going to be gear donors out there. Once they run out of matches, or once their little fire starting super ninja hickey-madoos that they've bought wherever, Bass Pro Shop or wherever the hell they got them, once those expire or break or run out of fuel or whatever, or once they run out of whatever 500-year packed food they brought with them, and they don't know how to go out and they don't know how to make a figure 4 deadfall, or they don't know how to fish without a store-bought fishing hook, or any of that stuff. Once that all disappears, you're going to be able to walk up behind their dead bodies and take their food, take their gear. But spend a little time, break it down into its core components. Okay, here is my fire kit. Okay, that's all gone now. What do I do in the wild to make that fire? One of the things I've tried and never mastered is a hand fire drill, where you take the wood and, it's basic same concept as a bow drill. I've never really worried that much about not being able to do it with a hand drill, because the odds of me never being able to make a bow, to do it with a bow drill, are to me astronomical, because I'll always have shoelaces or a piece of my clothing that I can use to make a bow. So I'm not all that concerned about the fact that I can't do it by hand. I have tried and I have tried and I have tried and I've tried to do it with a hand drill. I've gotten very close once and got frustrated and gave up. But I understand the principles, and if you put me in a situation where that's all I've got to make fire, I'm probably going to figure it out. I've already learned from the mistakes I made, and I will try again one of these days, and until I do get it right. But using a hand drill to make a fire is probably one of the hardest things you'll ever find, in my opinion. Man, there's some guys on the internet that make it look easy. But come up with alternative options. Know what you're going to have to replace, as like I said, gear's great, but it expires. It'll run out. It'll, you lose it, burn it by accident. And accidents happen in there. You're moving across the creek, you trip, fall, in an effort to keep from drowning, you drop your pack in the creek, it's gone. Now that gear is gone. How are you going to survive without it? So, and on any long term, these guys that are worried about the breakdown of the economic society, and I'm going to have to go to the woods and live for the next 10 years and all that, you can't carry enough gear and you can't carry enough food to survive a year. You can store it somewhere, but what are you going to do if an armed group of people comes and takes it from you? If you're smart, if there's more than, I mean, if there's one of you and 5 of them, if you're smart, you're going to take everything you can carry and you're going to get out of Dodge quick, because you probably would not survive that confrontation. Therefore, you need to be prepared. Okay, now my food's gone. My food stores are gone. How am I going to feed myself? I know I can, or at least I have as good a chance as a lot of people, better than most. So, with that being said and keeping that in mind, I appreciate you watching my videos. Got questions or comments about this or any other video, I love to hear them. I'm going to go ahead and get this uploaded. This was just really food for thought. You guys need to understand that gear is great. And like I said, I'm as big a gear junkie as anybody else. But having the gear is only good as long as you have the gear. There will come a time, or there might come a time, that you don't have that Bic lighter or those Vaseline soap cotton balls or that char cloth or whatever else sitting there. So you need to know how to do it without it. So, get back to the basics. That's the message of this video. So, appreciate you watching. Have a good day.